You're listening to the Mind Over Finger podcast, episode number 35, the fifth and last conversation discussing the Fischoff Effect.
Welcome to the Mind Over Finger podcast, discussions on mindful music making, efficient practice, and building a purposeful career. And now, your host, Dr. Renee Paul Gauthier.
Hi, everyone. I hope this podcast finds you doing wonderfully well. If you've heard the last few conversations, you know by now that I will be on site at University of Notre Dame as one of the official podcasters covering the 46th annual Fischoff competition from May 10 to 12. And this week, I'm bringing you 5 former winners of the competition to talk about their experience preparing for the performances and competing at Fischoff, and about the wonderful adventures and opportunities that have followed their win. In this series, you hear about the Fischoff effects with my guests, Blaise Magniere from the Avalon String Quartet, Dorival Puccini from Axiom Brass Quintet, Matt Landry from the Akropolis Reed Quintet, Christopher Whitley from the Thalea String Quartet, and Lydia Reah from the former Kairos String Quartet. Whether you're a musician about to compete at the competition or a music lover looking for a fresh approach to practicing and preparing for a concert, make sure to subscribe and tune in every day because those conversations are bursting with inspiration and extremely useful information. Each group has a unique and motivating story, and my guests are so generous with their insightful tips and advice. And now, please meet Lydia Reah, cellist with the former Kairos String Quartet. Let's go to the show. Lydia Reah, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for asking me to be on. I'm happy to be here.
Lydia, I'd like to jump right in. So would you please introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and also let us in on the information of the name of your group, the year you attended Fischoff, and the prize that you guys won.
Yes, of course. So, as previously stated, my name is Lydia Reah, and I am a 19-year-old cellist from the United States, currently based in Cleveland, as I am a freshman at the Cleveland Institute of Music. And I attended Fischoff in 2018 in the junior division category with the Kairos String Quartet, and we won gold in the junior division.
And would you please tell us a little bit about your group, how you guys met, and how your group came into existence, and what your activities are like today?
So I attended the Academy of the Music Institute of Chicago for 4 years, and that is where my group was based. So we are all put into chamber groups at that academy, and our academy is actually known for having a pretty intense chamber program that really prepares students really well for competitions and then also for college. And a lot of alumni of the program have gone on to be in professional chamber groups as well. So I was in it for 4 years, and I was in this group, the Kairos String Quartet, with Joshua Brown, Thompson Wang, and Lydia Reah, who are actually all 3 violinists. So we didn't actually have a real violist in our string quartet. And Josh and I had played together the year previously in a piano quartet, and we got along really well. We worked really well together, so we knew that we wanted to be in a group together for the next year, which was all of our senior year in high school. And so we went through, we have a process where we can request who we want to work with and what coaches that we want to work with. And so we knew we wanted a string quartet, and we knew we wanted to work together. And we knew that we wanted to have our coach be Rodolfo Vieira, who's a fantastic violinist based in the Chicago area that works at Northwestern and is also a coach at the Academy. So we requested each other at the end of the year after we had played together in our piano quartet for a year. And we weren't really sure who the other 2 members were going to be because, as I said before, we didn't actually have a real violist in our group because Academy is a really small program. The year that I graduated from it, there were 21 students, and there was actually only 1 real violist in the program total that year. So we knew that there was probably going to be some switching around with violinists versus violists, and we weren't really sure what that was going to be. Thompson had been in the program for a year already, and then it was actually like the year that Kairos was formed, it was actually Julian's first full year in Academy. And so Josh and I knew we would be together. We knew we'd have a string quartet. We knew Rodolfo would be our coach, but we showed up on the first day of academy and we're put in a group with, as I said before, Thompson and Julian as well. And it was kind of just, I think, match made in heaven for what we were working on at the time. And yeah, so that's where we received our coachings from. We met every Saturday at Academy. We had 2 hours of chamber music every week. So 1 hour with a coach and 1 hour on our own for rehearsals. But because we knew that we wanted to be a competitive group and we knew that we had competitions that we wanted to prepare for, we generally met outside of those times as well. So we would often rehearse on Fridays. Sometimes we would rehearse on Saturdays after Academy because we knew that we needed to get all the time and that we could. And we played a lot of repertoire for a junior group. Actually, the week before we did Fischoff, we also competed in the Emprise Chamber Arts competition at the University of Michigan. And for that, we brought 6 movements, so 6 pieces that we competed with. And then for Fischoff, we brought 5, which was, I think, 2 more than any other group brought to that competition. There might have been a couple groups that brought 4, but we had much more repertoire than a lot of the other groups that were competing. And we planned for that. So in the first semester of the year, we worked really hard to learn a lot of repertoire really quickly. So our first performance as a group, we played 3 movements of our piece, which is, if anybody's familiar with how junior string groups work or junior groups work in general, that is kind of a lot of repertoire. Generally, you start with 1 and then you build from that. And we started with 3 because we just knew, since we were all seniors, we were going to be dealing with a lot of scheduling stuff when college auditions were coming around. So we kind of back-ended our preparation for it and learned as much as we could as soon as we could. And then we actually barely rehearsed it through the months of February through March because our schedules were insane. We were going all over the country every week. So for our auditions and stuff. So there were a lot of times that we'd have rehearsals with missing 1 member or missing 2 members and, just working with what we could at the time. And then our preparation going into Emprise and then Fischoff the week after was pretty intense for a couple weeks leading into that.
And for those who are not familiar with the process of the junior category at Fischoff, can you talk to us a little bit about that? How many pieces did you have to prepare? And do you have to send in a recording? How does that work?
Yeah, so for the Fischoff competition and for a lot of competitions like this, you do have to pass through a pre-screening round initially. And so for the junior category, they take 24 groups, and for the quarterfinal round. So to get into the quarterfinal round, you have to, I think you send in 2 contrasting pieces, I believe is what they ask for. And I think they ask for around 15 minutes of time. We apply to so many competitions, I'm kind of getting them mixed up, but I'm pretty sure it's around 15 minutes, and it's 2 different pieces, like contrasting pieces, so that the jury can kind of assess your abilities on different levels. And when they say 2 contrasting pieces, they generally mean from different time periods. So my quartet played everything from Haydn to Bartok to Mendelssohn and things like that, so that you could really showcase your different strengths and things like that. And as I said before, because we were so busy and we knew we would be so busy coming into the spring semester, we actually recorded really early, and we recorded in December. Tapes were due in, I think it was beginning of February or mid-February, something like that. And we recorded beginning of December because we were like, we don't have any other time to do this and we want to get it done. And that way also we could send in the tapes that we needed to send in for the quarterfinal round and to get into the live rounds. But then also we would start working on our other repertoire that we needed to learn if we had made it into the live round, which thankfully we did. So yeah, we had to send in those. And then once you get to the live audition round, you find out in about, I think it's March, something like that. And then you have to send in all of your scores and everything for everything that you're going to be playing. So you have to decide well in advance what you're going to be bringing to the competition. And you have to send in all your scores. They require original scores. So I was carrying something around like 16 scores or something by the time the year was over, just with all of our library scores and our printed score parts off the computer, just everything like that. So they take 24 groups for the quarterfinal round, and then they cut that down to half for the semifinal round into 12 groups, and then they take 3 into the final.
Wow. And from listening to you, I can see that you guys had really great planning skills and also a lot of self-motivation and dedication and had to make many sacrifices. How did your group prepare for the competition? Can you talk to us a little bit about the rehearsal process and how you guys worked on that repertoire?
Yeah, of course. So like I said, I think something that really made our group work well together was first of all, the fact that Josh and I had worked together before and liked how we worked together, that definitely helped because we kind of knew how each other rehearsed and we were accustomed to playing with each other already. And a really unusual thing about my group, which is not common at all, because as I mentioned before, we didn't have a real violist. So we had 3 violinists and a cellist, me, and we had our first violinist and our violist switch pieces for half of our repertoire. So Josh played violin for 3 pieces, and then viola for 3 pieces, and then Julian played first violin for 3 pieces and viola for 3 pieces, and Thompson was our second violinist. So that definitely kind of throws a wrench into things. It ended up our repertoire was that Julian ended up playing our modern repertoire, which was our Bartok, our Ginastera, and we did a piece by Nielsen. He played those on first violin, and then Josh did our classical and our romantic, which was, what did we play? Mendelssohn and Haydn and Dvorak. We did a slow movement of a Dvorak quartet. So that's kind of how we ended up splitting it up, where it was kind of like whichever new piece we were bringing into our repertoire, we would just balance out and say, okay, you played violin on this one, so you're going to play viola on this one. And it worked out that that Julian had the modern and Josh had the classical and romantic things. But that also is a pretty big wrench to throw into a junior group, especially because considering that at these rounds, you don't just play one movement, you play multiple movements. And for our quarterfinal round, the judges choose what order you play your pieces in, and they chose it in an order that we had to do 2 switches. So usually if we were able to choose our own order, we would have one of them start on viola and then end on violin, or vice versa, so that we would have one switch. But for the quarterfinal round of Fischoff, and everything is timed too. So you are timed and they cut you off when you hit I believe it's 10 minutes for the quarterfinal round. It's either 10 or 15. And when you hit that limit, like, you're done. You can't keep playing. So we had to do switches really quickly, which props to them. Obviously I'm the cellist. I don't play an instrument like that, but I can't even imagine having to flip back and forth. And when people hear that that's what we did, they're crazy. And I'm like, yeah, a little bit. But Josh had played viola the year before in my piano quartet. We also had the similar situation where we had our violinist and our violist switching, but Julian had never picked up a viola until September, when we were formed, end of August, I believe. And yeah, we started rehearsing and becoming a quartet in September, and that's when he learned to read alto clef. So that was one thing. That was one hurdle we had to go over, and he learned really quickly, picked it up really quickly, and had a great viola sound, so it wasn't really a problem. But that is something that we had to deal with, just because also when you're finding your group sound and you're learning how each other work and how a first violinist cues is, we had to learn that for 2 different people, because we were switching and essentially had 2 different group makeups for our repertoire. So a really big part, I think, of preparing is knowing how to rehearse, which is something that Academy really stresses and really teaches us how to do, I think. And that's a really big part of the program, as I mentioned before, is their chamber music. So a lot of times, because we were all really busy, as I mentioned, we were all seniors in high school and taking college auditions and doing college applications, we would rehearse generally 1 other day a week, sometimes 2 if we were really coming up on a competition or a big performance. And those would be, for the most part, marathon rehearsals. Like, we would be in a room for 4 hours learning our Bartok or learning our Ginastera. We learned the Ginastera that we did, which was the first movement of his first string quartet, in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So we had to learn things really quickly for things that were coming up. And a really big part of learning music quickly and putting it together quickly is playing from scores, and always having a score in the rehearsal when you're working on things, because scores clear up so many discrepancies that you might have in your individual parts depending on what edition you're using. But also, playing off of scores just allows you to see what else is happening in the group at the time and what you need to be focusing on. And you can be like, okay, here the cellist and the second violinist are together, so let's work on that. Or here the violinists are together, so we need to work on that. And it can bring things to light in a way that if you were just playing it through and trying to pick things up just by hearing them, that it might not be super clear if you're trying to do that. So we would always rehearse with scores and be able to pick things out. And, a big thing too is if we were doing duo group or trio work, having one person that's watching the score while that's happening and just making sure, pitches are correct, but then also the rhythms are correct, that they're articulating everything the same way, their bow strokes are the same way. A big thing that we worked on just in terms of sound and, how we were working on that was playing exactly together is really hard. You know, playing everything with the same amount of bow hair on the string and the exact same articulation and the same shift and things like that, and being able to make decisions as to when you want it to be the same and when you want it to be different is kind of a big artistic leap that junior groups have to kind of figure out for themselves, and with their coach, how they're going to do that. Our coach drilled us really hard on how we came to play everything completely in unison and completely together. So even if we were, you know, working on a section, he was like, okay, let's start at measure 26. And if we didn't all start exactly the same way, we would redo it, and we would redo it, and we would redo it, and we would redo it just until it was completely together, coming in every single time. And he would also do this thing, I refer to it as looping. I don't even know if that's what he called it, but where we would take, say, an opening phrase or something, or we would take a repeated bow stroke that we would all have, and we would just play it over and over and over until it completely gelled and you couldn't distinguish the separate instruments. So we would have, say, our opening phrase of the Haydn, and if we weren't quite sure how we wanted to phrase it, you can sit around and talk about things, but at the same time, sometimes you just need to play them and figure it out. And you might find out that how it happens in reality is not quite how you heard it in your head. And so we would play like the same 4 measures again and again and again. So get to the end of the 4 measures and then just go right back and start them again without necessarily talking in between. Because sometimes when you're talking, you'll be like, okay, so you came in a little bit early that time. But chances are the person already heard it that time and they just need to try it again. Or, you know, say the bow stroke isn't completely matching. And the best way to fix that is to just do it over and over until you hear exactly how the other person is leading it. And another big part, I think, is not having a first violinist or one person in the group dictate everything. Because if one person is dictating everything, it's just people don't work well together. Some people of the group might not feel heard. And I will say that in our group dynamic or whatever, you can have people that are more, you know, take more of a leadership role, and people that take more of a, I don't want to say a follower role, but maybe aren't quite as vocal, but making sure that everybody is heard when they need to be heard is a really big thing. I would consider the mom of the group. If you ask any of them, they will tell you that I'm the mom. So, you know, sometimes I would be a little bit more vocal and I'd be like, okay, that was really not good. We really need to do that again. But at the same time, whenever we would stop and somebody else had something to say, we always took it into consideration. And if we weren't quite sure if we agreed, we would try it. So try everything out that everybody brings to the table, because you never know. Half the time we would change our minds as to what we liked, or as we were really going through things through the year and playing pieces that we had performed over and over again, by the time that we got to Fischoff, you know, we would change our minds and we'd be like, okay, so now since we're doing a repeat, let's do it the way that Josh suggested first, and then we'll do it Julian's way the second time. And sometimes we really liked it, and sometimes we were like, you know what, let's do Josh's way, but then change this about it the second time. So you really can kind of come to more of a consensus, and that means people agree on it more, and if people agree on it more, they are much more willing to do it.
Lydia, these are so great. I love how you talk about knowing how to rehearse and prioritize, and this tip about playing from scores. That's so important. Very, very important. And I'm loving this technique of the looping you talked about, because it really helps, I think, a group develop an interpretation organically and in the way that probably would help a group find their own way of playing things. Because exactly like you say, you can talk and intellectualize things, but sometimes as 4 musicians come together, there's so much that comes with the non-said, and you just sit and play together, and there is something that happens. And when all 4 people start listening and adjusting, there's really magical things that can happen there. And everything you mentioned about this respectful teamwork, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of these wonderful tips and ideas and concepts.
Yeah, of course.
Now, can you talk to us a little bit about the experience during the competition itself?
Yeah, so Julian and his mom drove to the competition, and then Thompson, Josh, and I, and then Josh's mom and Josh's little sister all drove to the competition together. That's generally how it worked out, just in terms of our carpooling situation. So we have a lot of fun road trip memories getting there. So we drove from Chicago to Notre Dame, or Notre Dame, since it's Indiana, which is where the competition is. And another fun thing about the competition, because Academy, or MIC Academy, which is what the school that we were representing and where we were from, sends several groups to the competition every year, as we generally all stay in the same hotel. And so you kind of get to hang out with your friends at the same time. And it's a really fun time just at the end of the year to kind of chill out with each other, and it's a way to sort of de-stress while the competition is happening. It's nice to have friends in your support group there, and our director from Academy was there, as well as our coach from Academy. So you get, a nice supportive group of people, and that can really help during the competition to have that to fall back on.
Mm-hmm.
So juniors compete. As I said, there are 24 groups, which is a huge amount of groups. And we were J17, and so junior for 17. So the senior groups are referred to as S. It's just how they distinguish us. And also because they don't use your names when they announce you at first. And so you're just J17, because that's a way for the judges to kind of keep it a little bit more anonymous, if you will. So we were J17, which means we played in the late afternoon because they go in numerical order. And also this is random. So you're assigned a random number. We didn't get to pick what we were. And so you are assigned a time. And for the quarterfinals, as I mentioned, the judges pick everything, but you don't know what they pick until you go backstage for your warm-up time 10 minutes beforehand.
Mm.
So the judges pick everything, and they tell you what order they want you to play it in. And they give you the little runners backstage, give you these little sticky tabs that you can use to mark your music, because they would give us really weird cuts. Like they wanted us to play the first page and a half of Bartok, and then we just ended it. And it was so weird. And I was like, I want to go on, but here we are. So they choose that. And I think they had us go from, it was something like Bartok to Haydn to Dvorak. It was a really weird order that if we had picked it, we definitely would not have chosen that. So they picked, I believe, 3 pieces for our quarterfinal round. It was 3 or 4 of our pieces that they heard in our quarterfinal round. And yeah, judges get to pick everything for that. And the other thing that's kind of a disadvantage for the juniors is that the quarterfinal round doesn't happen on the stage that you see all the Fischoff photographs from, the beautiful hall that they have there. That is not where the juniors compete. The juniors compete in this little auditorium that is meant mostly for theater work and for spoken word. So the acoustics are just very strange, and you don't get to warm up in the hall beforehand either. So you kind of are adjusting to the acoustics while it's happening. It's really dry, and so it can be really hard to like blend sound and to hear across the stage to your colleagues working with you. So that's kind of something that throws you for a loop a little bit when you first get out there, especially because in our group, Thompson and Josh had competed at Fischoff before with other groups in previous years, but it was Julian's and mine first time. So that was our first time on any of the stages, and it was our first time as a group on those stages was as we were competing. So that is what happens for the quarterfinal round, and then that happens on a Friday. And juniors don't hear anything for the rest of the day. We don't know who goes on. We don't know who made it. You go back, chill at your hotel, maybe rehearse if you wanted to a little bit, but we were so fried. I don't think we did. So we did that. And then Saturday morning, you show up and there's a meeting for all of the junior division quarterfinalists. And we all go to this meeting, and Tom Rosenberg, who runs the competition, gives a huge long speech about Fischoff and its history and why it's important, and everybody's sitting there and is like, can you just announce already, please? But he does have some really good points that he brings up in terms of the fact that competing for the junior versus the senior division can be a very different thing. Actually, the group that won the senior division and the grand prize last year was the Kairos String Quartet, which is from Cleveland Institute of Music, where I study now, coincidentally. And they are still together as a quartet, and they're going to go into school as a graduate quartet in residence next year. And they're preparing for other competitions this summer. They are a group, and they're planning to stay together for the foreseeable future. Whereas the junior groups, a lot of times you break up after it happens just because people graduate and people go to different schools, and you don't all necessarily stay together for more than 1 year. And so a lot of what he talks about is that if you go to this competition and you don't necessarily win, but you played well, that is still an incredibly valuable experience to have. And you never know, you might come back again with a different group in the same division, or you might come back as a senior and be able to compete in that one. And just having that experience and learning how to compete. And as I said, everybody that goes through that quarterfinal round has to learn how to play music with 10 minutes of notice. So that's something that is really, I think, specific to that competition. So we talked a lot about that in terms of the competition and just taking what you can in terms of having a valuable experience. And also something that is kind of specific to this competition is the junior groups that don't go on into the semifinals are then invited back that Saturday morning for master classes with some of the jurors. So you still get an opportunity to really communicate with the jurors and get feedback from them and have another performance opportunity, even if you don't go on until the semifinal round. So that's what happens on Saturday morning. They announce all the groups and they announce them in the order that they're going to be playing later. And so from those 24 quarterfinalists, they take 12. And my group was called second to last. So we're sitting there on pins and needles. For some reason, the entire year, whatever competition we were doing, we were always called last. For M Prize the week previously, they'd go from 6 finalists to 3, or 6 semifinalists to 3 finalists, and we were the last finalist group called. Like, we just always were the last group called for whatever division we were doing. So we would just be on pins and needles for ages. And because you sit through this whole probably half-hour long meeting, and then they start to announce the groups, and as they're getting down, you're like, okay, wow, there are not that many spots left. Like, who else are they going to call? And we were called second to last, which means we performed 11th out of 12th, which I think worked to our advantage. We liked playing towards the end of the competition. It gave us more time to, warm up and chill out and kind of de-stress from the stress of having that announcement ceremony earlier in the day. So yeah, they announce all the groups, and then everybody disperses, and the semifinalist groups are given a warm-up room time, and then when they're competing. And while this whole thing is going on, the senior division has started. And so this is why the quarterfinalists and the semifinals are in different rooms for the junior division. It's just because there are so many of them, they can't put them all into the same big stage. But for the semifinals, you do get to play in the big hall, which is nice. But again, at the same time, it was our first time playing in that hall was when we walked on the stage for the semifinals. So you're still constantly adjusting to acoustics and how things sound in that bigger space. So after that announcement, we actually went into the hall to hear some of the senior division groups play, which I highly recommend doing if you have the opportunity, because senior division groups are just, they're just in a different world in terms of where they are in their careers and their education and things like that. And so it was really cool to hear some of the groups perform, and some of the groups were performing pieces that we were working on. And so you can take inspiration from that and learn things from them. Or you can also learn music that you're like, oh, hey, that's a really cool piece and I would love to play that sometime. So I highly recommend going to hear senior division groups or any other people competing in a competition that you're doing if you get a chance. I think it's a really valuable experience. But I do say that I cannot listen to anybody competing in my same category before I play. I know some people can. I cannot. I could listen to senior division groups and I was like, I do not want to hear any of the juniors. I cannot deal with it. I just don't want to. I just need to stay. You do need to have somewhat of your own guard up and just stay focused on what you're doing. So then we had our warm-up time, which they gave us a room. I think it was for probably about a half hour, 45 minutes, something like that we were given a warm-up time. And then we competed in the semifinals. And for semifinals, we were able to choose our own repertoire. So we could choose what we played and what order we played it in, but they did still cut us off in between pieces if they wanted us to move on to the next thing. So we had the semifinal round, and then there was a short break for dinner and everything. For us, it was pretty short because, as I said, we competed second to last. So there wasn't a ton of time for us in between when we played. And then there's a meeting that night where they announced the finalists. Mm-hmm. So then you go into another hall at the university, and everybody's in there. The senior division groups for both strings and winds, and then all of the junior groups are all in this room. And then that's when they announce who made it to the finals, which again, my group was the last one called in the last category, which so we're just sitting there on pins and needles. And for every announcement that we had at every competition that year, like we would hold hands. Like I would just be shaking in my seat, like waiting for this, like just so close to just throwing up. I was like, I am so nervous. This is horrible. I think announcements are the worst part of any competition ever. It's so much worse than actually competing. So they go through that, and then they announced the finalists. And for groups that aren't finalists, they get to go and talk to the jurors and get feedback from them because they have this big ice cream social that night. So you get to go and talk to the jurors. If you're a finalist, you are not allowed to go talk to the jurors. And then we also, and since we were finalists, after everybody else had left the room, we had to declare, because we also got to choose what we played for finals. So we had to declare what we played for finals. We also had to declare what we would play for the winners gala if we won, because there's a second performance that next day. And then we just had to fill out all of our information that they would need for prizes and things like that. And then you go home and then you try to sleep, which I did not. I slept horribly. I was up for 90% of the night. I could not sleep. I was just so nervous. And then the juniors finalists compete. Did we compete first? I don't remember. I don't remember if juniors or seniors go first, but you compete in the same hall that the semifinals are in. So we competed, and that semifinal or the final round is the longest round. So we got to play most of our repertoire in that round. And then there's a professional photographer there. So right after you compete, after you're so nervous, and also again, we played last that day too. So we were towards the end of all of our rounds, just coincidentally. You don't get to pick when you actually play. So then after we had that, after we competed, then we had pictures with the professional photographer that's there, because they take them of all the groups generally, but then especially the finalist sets, so that they can use them for promo. And then, if you want them for your own use after, you can. And then you go back into the hall, and everybody's in the hall. A lot of the groups have stayed to watch the finals that didn't make the finals. And then all the finalists are there, and you sit in the first few rows of the hall. And this part is all broadcast on a local, I don't remember what station it was, but it's on like a local public television station. So it's all being broadcast there. And then it's a 30-minute long speech that they give about their donors and thank you for coming. And we're so glad to have you here. And I just wanted to throw up the entire time. I'm so nervous. And so we're sitting there, and they start to call groups up one by one. And the way that they do is they call it in 3, 2, 1 for each division. And so as soon as they called the second group, since there's only 3 finalists, we knew we had won. And I still kind of get chills thinking about that moment, just sitting there. And I think I was holding Thompson's hand, and Thompson was holding, like I said, we held hands for all of it because I was just shaking. And the moment that he just called it and called the second group, and we knew that we had won, it was, I don't know that I've ever really experienced something like that, because winning a chamber music competition is really different from winning a solo competition, because the amount of teamwork and the amount of effort that has to go into every single rehearsal and, every other competition we had leading up to that, every other performance we had, every radio interview we had leading up to that, it's all as a team. And if one person isn't in it 100% and doesn't have the same ideas as you, you're not going to get anywhere. And so to go out our senior year like that with, people that I had really grown to love and we spent a ton of time, and we were, I hung out with them the most out of anybody at Academy that senior year. And so we just had gotten really close and spent a lot of time together by that point. And I'm kind of getting chills thinking about it now. I love them so much. Yeah. So they called our name. So we were Kairos, and they called us for first prize. And there's a video of it, and I'm so close to tears in that moment. It was such a cool moment to have. And so because Fischoff is a really big chamber competition too, we came off stage after they announced it, and we had to grab our instruments and then turn right back around, because then they have, as I said, the winners gala, which for the seniors is they have the senior gold wind division and then the senior gold string division compete again for the grand prize. But we were done because it's just one junior division. So we were done competing, but we got to perform again. And so we came off stage, grabbed our instruments, turned right back around, and then pretty much went back on stage. And that is one of the most fun performances I have ever had in my life, because it was our first performance in a while that wasn't competing, because we did a lot of competitions leading up into this. And then to come out of having technically 3 rounds for this competition that we had already gone through, and since we had already just played all that same repertoire that we played for the gala earlier in the day competing, but now it was for fun and we got to just let go and have fun with it. I mean, we played the first movement of Mendelssohn F minor string quartet. That was one of the pieces that we played on the gala, and the finale is the fastest that we had ever played it. We went off because we were just so relieved and excited, and it was so fun. We were just smiling the entire time. My face was just glowing, and it was, that's a memory that I'm never going to forget, is playing on that stage and having it broadcast and having people that you love in the audience. And our coach was there, my mom was there, the director from Academy was there. And so the junior division groups, perform then, and then the senior division groups go on to perform or to compete essentially for the grand prize round. And then they call everybody back up stage, all the gold medalists, and then everybody else up on stage, and you take pictures and you get to talk to the judges, and then you're done. And you're like, wow, I kind of didn't sleep for 48 hours, but that was totally worth it.
And you know what? This is a great segue into my next question, which is what comes next? What is the aftermath? And what did Fischoff bring to you?
Yeah, so a cool thing about Fischoff is the prizes that they give out in terms of performance opportunities. And so for the junior division, our group got to be on From the Top, which was really nice because we did From the Top in October of 2018 when we hadn't played together since May of 2018. Because as I said, we were all seniors in high school, and I am a freshman at the Cleveland Institute of Music, but all three of the guys actually go to New England Conservatory now. They are all violin performance majors. They're all in three different studios and doing really well. But it was kind of fun to go back and to see them at their school because we recorded it at Boston. So we did it at Jordan Hall. And so we went back and we got to do From the Top from the competition. From the Top has a lot of cool outreach opportunities that they do for their young artists. And we got to go to a charter school in Boston and work with some of the students there. And then we performed at Jordan Hall and we performed the Mendelssohn again, which that piece for us was really something that it was one of the first pieces that we had started and something that we knew was kind of reliable at that point in time. And so we just got to have fun with it. And, again, performing a piece that you've done in a lot of competition rounds and then getting to just perform it for fun is a really nice experience because you kind of let go a little bit. And just get to let go and have fun with it. And for us, it was a really nice reunion that we got to have. We aren't a group together anymore. As I said, junior division groups typically don't stay together just because of where you are in your career at that point in time. I know I'll work with them all again at some point in life, probably. It's a small world and we keep in touch still. So that is what we got to do after Fischoff, which was really nice and it was a lot of fun.
Mm. And I know that for me, when I was a young musician, I was getting so much out of doing competitions. For you, how was that? What do you feel like you got personally out of competing?
I think at a competition like Fischoff, where it is much more of an overall event than it is necessarily a competition, there's people from the local community that come and watch it. There's people from the not so local community that come and watch it. As I said, it's broadcast on television for the Winners Gala. So people that live nearby, might just happen to be watching it because they turn on the TV in their homes and weren't even really planning on it, but they get to watch some really great chamber music performances that are happening nearby. The sense of community that an event like that brings is really special because I got to meet a lot of people there that I know I'll work with again in the future. Or I actually sort of met my roommate here at college through that because another girl that I had met and was competing in another group at a couple different competitions that I had done that year, knew that I was going to CIM and then knew my current roommate through her pre-college academy. It was like, oh, I met this girl that's going to CIM. And then my roommate texted me, was like, hi, do you have a roommate yet? And I didn't. And now we are great friends. So you get to meet a lot of really cool people from an experience like that. You also get to meet and interact with some really esteemed faculty and musicians that are the jurors for a competition like that. For us, Paul Katz, for example, served on the jury, which he's a really big name in the cello world. And I had never actually met him before the competition. And so I got to speak with him after. You get a lot of really valuable feedback, even if you aren't going on necessarily as a group, you still can learn so much from what the jurors have to say. And, a lot of times they'll be like, oh yeah, we really enjoyed your performance. You can work on this next time. And it's things that you don't remember because it's like, okay, once I brought it to this level, how much farther can I take it? And there's always people that are willing to help you with that.
And Lydia, do you have any advice for the young musicians that are about to compete?
I'd say first and foremost, have fun with it and remember that you're there with a group. You're not there as a soloist. You're not there only representing yourself. You are there representing your group. In a lot of cases, your academy or your pre-college academy, whatever you come from, where your group was formed. And so it's a really good learning experience because especially if you are coming in as a junior, you get to have this experience where you're not quite at that senior level, but there's still a lot of pressure. I would say for sure, there's still a lot of pressure on you. And you want to perform best and you want to do your best, but do it because you want to represent yourself well, not because you want to beat someone else. And come into it with this mindset of what can I learn from every opportunity, and just like, as I said before, listen to as many other groups as you can. You'll find people that you're like, wow, they sound really great, and I hope I can work with them someday. Or you might find a piece that you really like, or you might find people that you eventually end up going to school with. The classical music world is so small, that I think the more people that you can meet and give a good impression of yourself is really important. And it's also, it is a professional setting. So while you are having fun and while you might hang out with your friends at the hotel later, it's a really good experience to learn how to present yourself professionally in a stressful situation and learn how you react in a situation like that. How do you react with the people at the competition that are running the competition, either the jurors or people that are just the runners or taking care of your music for you, or the stagehands, but also your group itself and your coach. Learn how you are in a situation like that, and learn every time how you can improve your attitude in a situation like that, because people might not necessarily remember who got what prize at a competition, but they will remember who they liked at a competition. And I think that's something really important for young people to take.
That is so true. I completely agree with you. Lydia, I think that hearing your account of your experience at Fischoff and hearing about all this wonderful insight you have and this great advice, I think is so valuable for the listeners. I'm so happy that I could talk with you today. But before we go, can you tell us where to find you and where can people follow you? Because I personally follow you on Instagram and I find you so inspiring. I love watching your career grow. There's a lot going on. What are you up to these days?
Oh, thank you so much. That is so sweet. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Lydia_cello. And that's where I post a lot of day-to-day life, what it's like as a conservatory student. I'm a music performance major here at the Cleveland Institute of Music. And, just follow along with travels, competitions. I try to keep it pretty real in terms of what my day-to-day life is. I also do have a website, www.lydia-reah, my last name spelled RHEA.com. And that's where you can find longer YouTube links of me playing, also my event schedule, so where I'm going to be performing next. And I think that is it in terms of where you can find me on the internet. My YouTube is also under my name. Yeah, I'm just about to finish up my freshman year here at the Cleveland Institute of Music. I have finals coming up very soon, and my final quizzes and stuff in the next couple of weeks. And then I have some exciting summer plans. So if you stay tuned to my Instagram and my website, you should check those out because you might find out where I'm performing next.
Oh, this is a great cliffhanger. I love it. Lydia, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for asking me. I had such a good time, and Fischoff is such a special thing to me and to a lot of people, so I'm happy I could speak about it today.
And there you have it. I hope this conversation and the ones that preceded it brought you a ton of valuable information, applicable strategies and tips, and lots of inspiration. Now it's competition time, so make sure to follow me on Instagram for live action from Fischoff and tune in the coming weeks for more episodes covering the Fischoff experience. Also, make sure to visit fischoff.org and their Facebook page, facebook.com/thefischoff, to get more info on the live streaming of the performances. That's right, you will be able to witness these incredible young musicians from everywhere in the world. As always, you can visit mindoverfinger.com for the show notes, which have more information about the competition and today's guest. And I'd love to hear from you. So please take a screenshot of the episode, share on Instagram, and tag me at mindoverfinger, tag Lydia at Lydia_cello, and tag Fischoff Competition at Fischoff Chamber Music, and use the hashtag Fischoff 2019. That's FISCHOFF 2019, so we can see that you're listening, share it on our stories, and also give you some love. To everyone competing at Fischoff, I wish you good luck and an amazing experience. Once again, thank you for listening, and à bientôt!